Hello, welcome back to our Health Bite series. Today, I have the good fortune of being with Will Chow, our local dietitian, to share information with you on nutrition and gut health. Welcome, Will.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, and yeah, look forward to sharing a bit of information about nutrition and the gut microbiome. So,
Beautiful.
to hmm? so yeah, really nutrition and the gut microbiome. So, what exactly is that gut microbiome? So, really, it's a collection of super tiny life forms, such as like bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, all these little things that live in our gut. And it's actually estimated that a single person will have anywhere between 30 to 400 trillion microorganisms in their gut at any given time. It seems a bit weird, but all of these little microorganisms, they are really beneficial to our health. So just want to mention that the information presented today is for educational purposes, and is meant for general education, does not replace professional medical advice. For personalized and tailored dietary advice and guidance unique to yourself, please call your local health service and inquire about making an appointment with your local dietitian. Excellent. So really, there's quite a bit of work going into our area with that human gut microbiome, but research is still in its infancy. So really what we know now is there's strong links to a low gut microbiome diversity and things like chronic pain, autoimmune diseases, obesity, cardiometabolic disorders, liver disease, inflammatory bowel disease, chronic inflammation, even depression, poor mental health, chronic fatigue, colorectal cancer, food allergies, intolerances, and even osteoporosis. So all of these things have actually have starting to get some links with that gut microbiome. So there's even emerging evidence now for the treatment of some of these chronic conditions with certain combinations of probiotics, microorganisms that may help alleviate symptoms. But research is still in its infancy right now, so I wouldn't go recommending any specific probiotic strains for certain conditions just at this time. We just don't know that information yet. But what we do know is that if you have a low diversity of that microbiome, also known as dysbiosis, you are just more likely to either have or develop one of these conditions. So just to put it sometimes in perspective, has anyone ever got a feeling of like butterflies in their stomach, or that gut feeling, or maybe just lost their appetite when something unpleasant happens, or even like a nervous poop? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
These are several great, although maybe inconvenient and sometimes unpleasant examples that just show how our brain and our gut is actually connected. So this is now what we refer to as like that gut-brain axis. So research has now shown that this gut-brain axis is just a really complicated communication network between our brains and our guts that we're really only starting to understand. So, but one of the main reasons that gut microbiome, we believe, provides some of these protections for all of those chronic conditions is that it provides essential substrates from fermentation and breakdown of non-digestible compounds, also known as dietary fibers. It's one of the reasons why we like to have lots of fiber in our diet, but then we're not actually digesting it. It doesn't actually contribute to our own energy or protein needs, but those little microorganisms love those dietary fibers and are able to ferment and digest those. And then those little microorganisms produce all of these little things like short chain fatty acids, these essential substrates that we can use that help our own health.
So if you essentially you eat more fiber and then you're giving more more diversity to these great little bugs in our gut.
Yes, 100%. So all of these little bugs like certain types of fibers, and I'll go into a little bit more in a second, but then the more diverse amount of foods that we can eat, the more diverse our microbiome is going to be. So, but really one of the main overall theories is that gut microbiome is linked to just nearly every aspect of our health. So back to how do we improve and protect it? So the main thing we just sort of hinted on before is diversity. So the gut microbiome, imagine it like a real complex ecosystem, like the ocean. There's countless types of plants and animals that all live in harmony and that will affect that overall health of that environment. But what can happen with a lack of diversity and overgrowth of one organism, which can be due to several factors, they can take over and destroy everything. Things like, the invasive urchins or starfish, they contribute in their own right, but too much of any one thing, it tends to cause a lot of issues. So the first point of call to ensure that healthy gut microbiome is that diverse amount of food.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually think about it, most people will only eat maybe 8 to 10 different types of vegetables, full stop. Some of the most common ones. And if you think about your own diet, it's probably around there. But
yes, it's hard to get more in, isn't it? And you think about, the busy lives we lead and the convenient food.
yes,
Yeah.
100%. So there's a lot of the staples, things like, potatoes, broccoli, carrots, celery, all those things. But there's thousands and hundreds of different types of vegetables that you can get, and they're all unique and all can feed different parts of that microbiome. So even if you think about this picture here that I have up on the screen, imagine each one of those people is like one type of microorganism, and each of them have one job. And that job is to break down one specific type of food. So say you have this gentleman over here, he likes the broccoli, this person over here likes cauliflower, and then all of these people like one certain type of things. So if you don't give them that food to break down, they're basically out of a job. And if they don't have a job, they're going to go away. They're not going to be there anymore. There's no reason for them to be there. So the more you can keep that diet diverse and lots of different plant foods, and it doesn't always have to be just vegetables. So plant foods can be things like nuts, seeds, herbs, legumes, all those kind of things can all contribute to that microcosm of that microorganisms and that microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
what we really want to aim for is 30 different types of plant foods in a week. That's that ideal range that we want to get to. More is even better. And just by thinking about the amount of different types of plants that you eat, would you get to 30? And if not, then maybe it's time to try experiment with some new things. Or it's like things like adding some extra herbs or spices or things to your food just to be able to bulk up the variety of plant foods.
I just love that analogy of feeding, our diverse groups. And I love that thought of, so having that thing on the bench, like that nut jar or that extra thing in your lunchbox, and you're not just having it because it tastes good, but you're also kind of reminding yourself to feed that colony you've got down there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not that one certain plant food is really better than the others. Things like, jars of nuts. Really, all nuts are great. So just mix it up. Walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts, macadamia, anything. Doesn't really matter. But the aim is just to get that variety is a little bit better for our gut microbiome.
Love it. Thank you.
All right. One of the next ways we can actually improve our gut microbiome is to introduce new microorganisms, also known as probiotics. So probiotics are little microorganisms that we introduce to our gut. So things like fermented foods can contain a whole cocktail of different microorganisms and can really help to contribute that overall makeup of your personal microbiome. So things like natural yogurt, and it needs to be like real yogurt. There's a lot of yogurt out there that's just, thickened. So just any real yogurt. Other fermented foods, very like kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. There are certain cheese varieties, natto, pickled vegetables, tempeh. There's even raw natural vinegars and lots of other fermented foods. Really, just about every culture throughout the world has developed their own style of fermented foods. And really, this is partially due to that increased shelf life and preserving nature of those foods because, long ago, we didn't really have refrigeration and we had a lot of we needed ways to keep food longer. So, but really now with the refrigeration and the availability of foods, the reliance on fermented foods is actually a staple is pretty much down to nothing. Like we don't really need to preserve food anymore to survive. But there's actually one school of thought that even due to that much better refrigeration, transport, and year-round availability of food, and that increased focus on that crop monoculture and development, has actually drastically reduced that reliance on fermented foods. And a consequence is that reduced biodiversity in our gut as well. So
Yeah.
really, fermented foods are a good way and even a really tasty way just to add to your diet, because the fermented
Mm.
foods will add in new bacteria, but then the majority of fermented foods are lots of different types of plant foods anyways, which will also add to that plant variety as well.
Mm.
So
So true. And I love that you're bringing in that natural way, because I hadn't thought about it before, that that's the way, we're meant to eat. And we've lived on this for so many, millions of years. And now it's kind of something we're not really turning to. What happens if we add this into a dish and it's heated? Is that still going to have the.
um, well, not as it won't have the same benefit as that probiotic side. So for something to be considered probiotic, it needs that live bacteria in it. So when you are making things like kimchi, if you were to eat it after it's fermented, yes, probiotic. But if you were to cook with it, then you're actually destroying all those live microorganisms, but you're still getting the plant varieties, so it's still beneficial, but I wouldn't consider it a probiotic then that stage, but it's still good for your health overall. So that's one of the
Mm,
reasons why things like sourdough bread can sometimes be confused as a probiotic, because you are
mhm,
getting the natural yeasts and the natural microorganisms to raise that bread. But as you bake it, unfortunately, you're going to kill off all those live organisms. You still get some health, you still get health benefits. It's still a type of that food, and your existing gut microbiome can still digest those, but you're not adding new microorganisms, if that makes sense.
yeah, good point.
All
Thanks.
right. Um, and there's even a lot of other ways you can help your gut microbiome. So one of the first things is, well, eating whole foods. So our gut microbiome has evolved over centuries to help us digest that food we eat, to extract all those vitamins, fatty acids, amino acids, and all these little bits that our bodies like. So it's our gut's job to break these down. And when it comes to processed foods, they're usually already broken down in that manufacturing process. Have you ever had some food like some like the chips or little cheese puff things? You put them in your mouth, they almost dissolve to nothing.
Mhm,
So really, what you're doing is you're almost outsourcing your digestive system. So it's already digested, it's already easily absorbed. So it doesn't really leave our gut much to do at all. So when, like I mentioned before, if we don't give our gut any work to do, it's
mhm.
not going to be very happy.
Yeah,
And
that's something I noticed as well when I had to start on the kimchi and things. It wasn't easy because my gut didn't like it to start with, but I had to really add it to my diet very slowly and gradually to get the benefit.
yes, that's a really great point to touch on. So if you are not used to eating a lot of these foods, yes, it is really important to start slow. One of the most common ones that I get a lot of sometimes complaints about is either like beans and legumes. So beans and
Mm,
legumes, great. I encourage people to eat a lot, but if you don't eat a lot of them to start with, and you go and eat a giant bowl of chili or those beans, you're going to probably get a bit of gut pain, maybe a bit of flatulence, a bit of wind, because your body's just not used to that. It takes a little while for your body to be able to adjust and rebuild, and you get your gut microbiome to start working again. So,
mhm.
I love the enthusiasm a lot of people have, but then in increasing things like those fibers, it is good to really do it much slower to avoid any type of gut issues. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. So one of the next things, just mentioned avoiding processed foods, but avoiding stress, really. So with stress, our gut is affected by our mood, and chronic stress will actually reduce our ability to digest food. So it's really common where someone gets a little stressed, a little anxious, they either lose their appetite, like, oh, I don't want to eat. It's because your body is saying, well, yeah, we are not digesting anything right now. So
Mhm.
by reducing some of that chronic stress, which everybody has in their lives nowadays, you can actually really improve your digestion. You can reduce any chronic inflammation, and that chronic stress can even alter that gut microbiome, because when you're in that heightened level of stress for a long period of time,
Mm,
digestion is your body's like least of its worries. It's preparing that fight or flight
mhm.
response. So it wants to run, it wants to fight. we're not digesting anything right now. So by
Yeah.
living in that state of chronic stress, it really does impair that digestion.
Yeah. And your vagus nerve, your body stress nerve, it runs all the way down and ends up in your butt. So it's literally a really important thing to work on as well. So I think a lot of people forget that side of it when we talk about being a whole, health vision. We want to improve our stress, and there's some videos also in our Health Bite series on stress if you're interested in managing that side of things as well.
Excellent. Yeah, great little segue there, because yeah, health and even your gut health is more to do than just the food that you eat. It all is encompassing.
Yeah.
One of the next as well, avoiding unnecessary antibiotics. Now, well, antibiotics, I have to mention, they are amazing. They've saved countless lives. Even the average life expectancy prior to antibiotics was like about maybe 40, 45-ish. But you still should be careful with their use and balance their potential risks. So GPs, they are all aware of this. Antibiotics will kill all the bad bacteria. So if we do have an infection, if we do have anything that requires antibiotics, I would still discuss with your GP about the benefits and the risks, because often the benefits to taking those probiotics are going to outweigh that risk of damaging your gut microbiome. But antibiotics, unfortunately, they do not discriminate, and they'll destroy all the good bacteria too. But the idea, rather than to just avoid antibiotics if we really do need them, is to have a good, strong gut microbiome to begin with. Because if your gut microbiome is strong, it can usually recover from just about anything, even if it does take a hit from some antibiotics.
Well, that's good to know.
The things is, well, food hygiene. Has anyone experienced an episode of food poisoning? So really, food poisoning, think of it like an overrun of one specific bacteria. It's like a riot in the streets of one bacteria that sort of kills off everything. And ideally, with food hygiene, you want to avoid that. It's actually quite possible to actually change your own gut microbiome, sometimes even permanently, after a really bad bout of some food poisoning or foodborne illness. So really, it's food hygiene. You don't need to be completely sterile, but for the most part in the home, just make sure that you're thawing things correctly, that you're cooking things to a reasonable temperature, that you're not eating leftovers that are a week old that you find in the fridge. So just having some good hygiene, because yeah, a bad bout of some gut gastro can really knock around your gut microbiome, just the same as a really intense course of antibiotics.
Great point.
One of the next things is, well, some exercise. Exercise and sleep, they can have an effect on your microbiome. So really ensure that in regular exercise, look for ways to improve your quality of sleep, because that exercise, it can inhibit that dopamine, we can reduce stress. That sleep, when we sleep, we get into an area that we sort of rebuild our bodies as well. So it's really important to improve exercise and sleep. So a few things that most people will, it's not quite related to my gut, but it's really all encompassing. So overall, we're still learning so much about our gut microbiome and these complex interactions that it has with our overall health. And perhaps one day we're going to be at an area where we can treat certain conditions with certain combinations of probiotics and microorganisms. But right now, the research, we really haven't reached that yet. So I would still be wary about taking specific probiotics for specific conditions. If you do choose to take a probiotic, it is best to discuss that with a GP, dietitian, or pharmacist as well, to see if it's right for yourself. But for the most part, a broad spectrum general probiotic is going to have just as much benefit as some of these targeted ones. So you don't need to worry about spending a whole lot of money on very specific strains. But as always, it is best to talk to your trusted health professional before taking any type of nutritional supplement. Excellent.
Thank you.
But
great information.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it. See you next time. Bye.